Hi folks, John Dunn here, RPG freelancer, publisher behind Melee Via. I'm up here at Immortals Inc. with Mikey.
What's up, John? How's life?
It's going great. How about you, Mikey?
Yeah, we're here. We're here to talk about something that I personally love. I mean, aesthetically pleasing wise, at least.
Yeah, so the cover and on this box set and some of the interior books we're going to come back to is really cool. It's very evocative of the material that's presented. Really digging it. Doug Kovacs did the cover artwork for the interior books. I'm not positive if he did the cover for this as well. But what we're talking about is the Dying Earth box set for Dungeon Crawl Classics. That's based on the work of Jack Vance. And let's talk about it. So this was a project led by Mark Bruner. He's done a lot of work on Dungeon Crawl Classics products. This was the product, I guess, of a 2021 June Kickstarter, raised about $350,000.
Ooh.
And it just came out in March of 2023. And there's a whole lot of supplemental material coming out for it too. There's some cool dice and a whole bunch of adventures. Right now, the store has these box sets in, but Carlos tells me the adventures are on the way. So keep an eye out for those too. We'll come back to all that.
The dice are amazing too.
Yeah,
I love the
so
dice or the die.
They're actually really themed, and I'm going to touch on that in a second too. This is a box set. It comes with 3 volumes: the Player's Librum, the Primer of Practical Magic, and the Intimate Anatomy of Several Creatures and Personages of the 21st Eon. And that is these 3 books, right? We'll touch on those. And then there's also a really cool fold-out map.
Really cool.
That's included in the box set. And let me see if I can grab this over here without, there we go, breaking anything. And there's also a code sheet in here that gives you download codes so you can grab the PDFs of everything as well if you want to have them on your tablet or your laptop instead of pulling out the book sometimes. Have you heard of the Dying Earth before or Jack Vance?
No, I just had a couple bad dreams about Earth dying. That's about it.
I mean, fair.
Yeah.
Fair. This is another Appendix N product. We talked about Appendix N recently, which may or may not air before this.
Yeah.
But that was the list of works that Gary Gygax credited as being a big part of his ideas behind Dungeons & Dragons. Big influences. I believe it was listed in the back of the AD&D Dungeon Master's Guide. Jack Vance's stuff had really a big impact on the game, a big impact I didn't even realize until many years after I'd been playing D&D when I sat down and read this stuff. D&D Magic, the base magic user class, which has gone by many names since it was the magic user, starts off with the characters having to relearn their spells every night, right? They sit down and they memorize stuff from their spell books, and then when they cast the spell, they forget them. That came from Dying Earth. That was the first place that idea was really written out, and even Gygax even readily admitted that. Ion stones are these kind of magical stones that you could let loose, and they're a magic item, and they would spin around your head, and they would give you special abilities. Well, that came from his works, but they were also the dice that you were talking about, Mikey, saying, hey, these dice are really cool. Those are the Ion Stones dice.
Oh, nice.
One of the spells, it's the first level wizard spell, Prismatic Spray, came from this. And of course, you've heard of Vecna, right?
Yes.
Vecna is an anagram for Vance.
Wow.
So that's where that name came from. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Dying Earth is kind of a post-apocalyptic setting that he created. And it's an era where magic kind of has surpassed science, though then we kind of get into Clarke's Law. Are you familiar with Clarke's Law?
No.
All right, so Arthur C. Clarke was the science fiction writer who's responsible for 2001, right?
Okay.
And a bunch of other stuff, but that's his best known work. And he had written a bunch, 3 laws down. And the third one that comes up and is really applicable here is any sufficiently advanced science is indistinguishable from magic for somebody who doesn't understand it.
Okay.
Basically the idea that, if I showed somebody a television and they were from 500 years earlier, they'd go, ooh, magic box with moving pictures, right?
Yes.
Same basic concept.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going on here, where it's not clear if it was really advanced science that became magic or magic just kind of surpassed it. In any case, it's an era where people wave their hands and memorize things out of books, and stuff happens. Society has more or less collapsed. There's kind of parallel realities that people can move between. The planet is so old that the sun is turned red, so Superman wouldn't have powers anymore.
Yeah, that'd be over.
Right. And most of the surface is kind of a wasteland. It has been covered in games before. Talislanta RPG very explicitly called out The Dying Earth as a big influence. And Pelgrane Press actually published, and I think they might even still publish, a Dying Earth RPG. We've talked about Pelgrane's Trail of Cthulhu stuff and some of the other products in the past here as well. Diving into these books, and again, the covers on these are just so evocative. Player's Librum is the first one that I wanted to talk about. This starts out with an introduction to Vance and the setting of the Dying Earth. Then it gets into character creation, and it introduces 4 new classes. You have the Vat Thing, which is...
With a V?
With a V, Vat Thing.
Wow.
That you're basically a wizard got bored and made you in a cauldron.
That's awesome.
And things probably didn't go perfectly, which is why you're no longer subservient to that wizard and doing stuff on your own as an adventurer now. You've got the Magician, which is pretty much what it says on the tin. The Wayfarer, which is kind of an explorer, and a Witch. When you make up your character, you're going to create an Animus, which is pretty much somebody who's mad at you. Then there's a selection of appropriately themed gear and some appendices that cover curios and languages and get into Vancian verbiage. So if you're familiar with old school D&D, you might remember that Gary Gygax had a tendency to use big words when he could. Vance kind of does that same thing, and on occasion he might even make up 1 or 2 of those words. So there's kind of an appendix in here that talks about unusual words that you might want to toss into your game as you're running it, because it kind of suits the source material. The next book is the Primer of Practical Magic. That's this guy. And it covers how magic has changed from typical Dungeon Crawl Classics in order to suit the setting. I didn't mention it, but you will need the Dungeon Crawl Classics core rulebook in order to take advantage of this stuff, right? This covers spell modification. How are you going to change the base spells that are listed in Dungeon Crawl Classics? And then it also has a section on spell creation, because the spellcasters in Dying Earth could make up spells when they needed to. It talks about how the Magician, the Witch, and the clerical magic is different in Dying Earth, and then it gets into a section on spells and an appendix of magical entity names and their appearances. You know, these are kind of big, powerful beings that might have an influence on your campaign. The last book is the rather long-worded title of...
You like this one the most, I feel
An
like.
Intimate Anatomy of Several Creatures and Personages of the 21st Eon. The 21st Eon is the time frame when the Dying Earth is set. It's presumably the last eon of Earth, and in that first book, back in the Player's Librum, it kind of talks about what the previous eons were. Eons don't really have a specific number of years. They're just kind of ages of the Earth when different things were going on, right? This book presents 4 different patrons. We've talked about patrons in DC before. They're kind of the big, powerful entities that are going to have big effects on the lives of the people who follow them. There's a gazetteer that kind of presents different areas where the PCs might want to take actions and hang out and investigate. Then there's a selection of magic items and a selection of monsters. This includes 33 different monsters, including the Grue.
Ooh.
Now, do you know what the Grue is? Grue? You're probably too young for this.
Besides Steve Carell, no, I don't know Grue.
Okay, so Grue is a monster that lives in the darkness and basically devours people.
So you're dark. When you were scared of the dark, there were valid reasons for that.
Yeah, and
wow,
there was a very famous Infocom game called Zork, and a big part of Zork was not getting eaten by the Grue. This was a thing back in the 80s when computer graphics were text. And then there's an appendix in this book as well. Oh, there were NPCs in that section too. There's an appendix with talismans, a section on games of chance, which kind of are a big deal in the setting and in the fiction, and provisions. Looking at a box set, 3 books, a map. Goodman Games Everything is paperback. Everything is black and white interior, though some of this art is just fantastically
awesome.
evocative. I love the color covers.
Even the black and white.
I love the
man.
black and white work.
Sheesh.
Some of these maps that pop up in here are also really cool, and I think
So
I just
much
flipped past
detail
one.
too, man.
Oh, incredibly detailed, yeah,
You
and
know how much work goes into that? Jesus.
amazing amounts. But anyway, lots of fun stuff in here. If you're a fan of the fiction, definitely check this out. If you aren't a fan of the fiction, maybe check some of that out first, because it's really cool, evocative stuff. And if you're a fan of D&D or the history of D&D, worth reading through some of that to see where some of these ideas came from. In any case, got this up here on the shelf at Immortals Inc. $60. Stop in, take a look through it, or hit us up at immortalsinc.com.
Well said, my friend. Some of the best art I've seen personally. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.
Good gaming, folks.